again to Jim and Kathy Ocean. As we all know, it's a special day here at Petaluma, so I'd like to introduce from Petaluma City Council, Mr. Mike Harris. Good afternoon, everybody. How awesome was that? Another round of applause for that. I can follow that. This is like being a kid again, because I remember growing up and watching the space shuttle flights taking off and getting up early in the morning to watch them. Get a little taller. Thank you. Appreciate it. So it's my honor on behalf of the city to actually have a proclamation for Rex Walheim, and we're going to proclaim it September 21st, 2013, Rex Walheim Day. So I'll go ahead and read this. There's some interesting information in here. Whereas 44 years ago, on July 20th, 1969, American astronauts sent a message to the Earth. The Eagle has landed, and in that dramatic and compelling moment in history, the first humans had reached solid ground beyond our own planet. And whereas from its first launch 30 years ago to its final mission in 2011, the space shuttle was the most technologically advanced machine ever built, and the space shuttle program, one of NASA's greatest triumphs. And whereas astronaut Rex Walheim, who has risked his life in service of this country, has flown on 3 space shuttle missions, STS-110, STS-122, and STS-135, and logged over 566 hours in space, including 36 hours and 23 minutes of spacewalk, EVA time. And whereas Rex Walheim was assigned as mission specialist and flight engineer on STS-135 Space Shuttle Atlantis, the final historic mission of the Space Shuttle program, and over his career has received numerous awards, including the Defense Superior Service Medal, Defense Meritorious Medal, Aerial Achievement Medal, along with various service awards. And now, therefore, be it resolved that Mayor Glass, along with members of the Petaluma City Council, do hereby proclaim Saturday, September 21st, 2013, as Rex Walheim Day, and commend Rex Walheim for his exemplary service to our country. He now serves as an inspiration to a younger generation that offers great promise for America's future endeavors in space exploration. Congratulations and thank you for participating.
I want to thank everybody for coming. It really is a pleasure to be here, and thanks, Mike, for that great proclamation. I really appreciate that. I have to start out, though, by showing you a cartoon. Does anybody remember the Far Side cartoons? Everybody remember those? Okay, well, I've got one that I've got first time about 20 years ago, and Mike, you guys have made this come true today, and so I got to give you a little bit of background. My name is Rex, right? So a lot of people come up to me and say, well, you're the first Rex I've ever met, and then it's usually followed by, I had a dog named Rex once. Okay, so about 20 years ago or so, this cartoon came out. As I said, it didn't come true until today. Is there what you see? Rex dog down to Merrill. And the caption is, well, every dog has his day. And so today, finally, after seeing this cartoon for 20 years, it finally came true, so thanks for giving me my day. So that's really good. I really appreciate it. And I also have to thank you on behalf of my brother Mark and my brother Kurt and my sister Karen, because you've given them enough material to give me grief for the next few years easy, you know. Next time I ask a favor from those guys, they're going to say, well, it's not Rex Walheim Day today, is it? You know, so I'm sure I'll hear about this from them a couple times at least, too. So what I want to talk about first is the last mission I flew on the Space Shuttle Atlantis about 2 years ago. Then after that, we're going to talk a little bit about what NASA's doing in the future. So mission STS-135 was flown about 2 years ago. And here's the crew. We have on the left Chris Ferguson, our commander, Doug Hurley, Marine pilot, Sandy Max, and myself, the mission specialist. And it was a unique flight because this was the last flight of the space shuttle. So usually we have a rescue space shuttle on standby to come get us if there's damage to the space shuttle during the mission. And so with this being the last flight, there was no space shuttle come get us if we had problems with our vehicle. So it made us rely on the Russian Soyuz spacecraft to be our rescue if something happened. So that meant we had to go over to Russia and get fitted for some Russian spacesuits, and it was really neat. So this was kind of early in our training flow. And they went over to Russia, and they fit you for the suit, and then they make you sit in this seat for about an hour. Actually, it was 2 hours. They pressurize it, which is not very comfortable because it cuts in behind your knees, and it's not a very comfortable position to be in. So I'm gritting my teeth really bad there. And the thing is, you have to stay in it to make sure the suit fits. You have to stay in it pressurized for 2 hours. And if you, after about a half an hour or so, something starts to hurt, and you say, "Okay, I'd like to stop and fix my leg and then go on," they'll say, "Okay," but they start the clock over again. And so you grin and bear it for 2 hours. And you can see how enthused the Russian engineers are behind me. But they had it better than me. And then we head to the Johnson Space Center. We'd start our simulator training. This is a picture of us in the simulator. And we also practice our docking with the space station. It's a big virtual reality, kind of a VR lab, we call it. It's an engineering simulator. And so we can be in the space shuttle down here and practice docking with the imagined space shuttle, or space station. We also have to do spacewalk training. Now on this mission I didn't have any planned spacewalks, but we still practice in case we have to go out and do any repair work. And so we have a very big pool in near the Johnson Space Center. It's about 40 feet deep. It's one of the largest indoor pools in the world. And on the bottom of the pool is a mock-up of the space shuttle and the space station. And that's me on the right there, upside down, practicing putting this big nitrogen box onto the space station. This is a task I did on my second flight. And you can see we have safety divers and a lot of people helping us out there. It's a big endeavor to practice those spacewalks. Since this was the last space shuttle mission, there were a lot of interest from the press. And so one day before we went up in the simulator, we had a little press conference and stuff. So it was interesting. It was a lot different than my first 2 flights. We also get a chance to fly from place to place in these aircraft. This is a T-38, and the T-38 is a high-performance jet trainer. It's supersonic, fully acrobatic, and this is us flying over the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. So we can use it to get around and also to practice our space flight readiness training. As you can imagine, it's a lot of fun to fly also. And it also helps us practice our crew coordination. You have a pilot in the front and a mission specialist like me in the back. And then the pilot flies and the mission specialist does navigation, communications, and stuff. Now, while we were training, the Kennedy Space Center, they were getting Atlantis ready to fly. And so here's Dave. She came out of the hangar, and don't worry, it wasn't just dependent on me to back her up. There were plenty of people watching the race and stuff. And then the space shuttle was mated with the external tank and rolled out to the launch pad. And they do that late at night, probably about a month or so before launch. And I'll show you a little time lapse here of how that looks. You can't hear the sound from here, but so anyways, they hoist it up on a big crane, and a very well-trained crane operator. And then we roll out, like I said, late at night when there's usually not very much wind. And since this was the last time we rolled a vehicle out to the launch pad, they invited all the Kennedy Space Center workers out there. And they got to come and watch it roll by. And we got to ride on the crawler too. It only goes actually 1 mile an hour. And it's really an amazing sight to see. But it looks all sturdy there, but when you're riding on it, you can see the shuttle is shaking like that. And you watch the big vertical tail that's going up and down, and you kind of go, is it supposed to do that? But it is, it can handle it. And here's the Atlantis payload, which was a logistics module. We were a resupply mission to the space station, so we're bringing a bunch of supplies to the space station. And they bring that out to the launch pad. And then they hoist it up and open the payload bays and set it in there. And then it's all a matter of watching the weather and hopefully it turns out. Now our weather, as you can see here, about a day or so before was not promising. But you get ready anyways in case it does clear up. So about a week before launch, we go into what's called quarantine. So the main thing for that is that you don't want to get sick from somebody who's got the flu or a cold. And so we have a special facility at the Johnson Space Center that we can go into and stay into. And it's not a full quarantine. We're allowed to see, I can see my brothers and my sister when I was in quarantine, but they keep you away from the general public. So it's kind of a big milestone. You say goodbye to your family a little bit. This is my son Jeffrey. I'm saying goodbye to him before I head off. And then we head down to the Kennedy Space Center about 4 days before launch. And just so happened the day we got to the Kennedy Space Center was the 4th of July. And so they gave us these little American flags. And as I told the press that was there that day, there's nothing like going to the Kennedy Space Center when there's a space shuttle on the launch pad and it's packed with your stuff. It's a really cool feeling. You know you're going to go flying in a few days. And on launch day, they had a lot of folks came out. They closed some of the bridges and allowed people to hang out on the bridges to watch the launch from. And about 3.5 hours before flight, you get orange suits on, and you head out to the launch pad. So we have this Astro van that takes us out there. And you head up to the area called the White Room, and then that's Atlantis' hatch right there. And these folks, they help us strap in and get inside the vehicle. So then you just sit there for about 2 hours, do some communications checks, and you never know for sure whether you're going to launch that day. It's kind of like preparing for the big game, but not knowing what day the big game is on. And so we didn't know whether the weather was forecast to be 70% chance of no-go, which means there was only a 3 in 10 chance we were going to actually get to go that day. And so we were watching the weather out the windows, and the commander would say, he's sitting up front right next to the window, and he said, well, I got good news and I got bad news. And the bad news is it's raining, because he can see rain on the windshield, but the good news is I see some clearing. And sure enough, the clearing did come over, and the weather cleared up enough that we could try for a launch. But then we came down to the T-minus 9-minute hold. Now, you always try to march all the way down to the T-minus 9 hold, and if anything's going wrong at that point, you don't launch. But everything was going well. The weather was good, the mechanical systems were all working properly, so they said, okay, you're go at T-minus 9. If they start the clock at T-minus 9, we practice that a ton, and so we know every step down from T-minus 9. And so we figure, okay, looks like we're going today, so we get all psyched up, and it looks like we're really going to get a chance to go after all the ups and downs of the weather. And then the clock ticks down all the way to 31 seconds, and at 31 seconds, the clock stops. And we hear on the radio, it says, the clock has stopped due to a failure. And we're like looking at each other, we had no alarms or anything, and we're like, you know, what kind of failure? So we could hear him talk, and at this point, there's only about a 1-minute launch window. So at that point, when I saw the clock stop at 31 seconds, I thought, hey, we're not launching. But I could hear in my comm set that they were talking about something. It sounded like they knew what it was, and they could fix the problem. We may get to launch that day. What the problem was you see the cap right there? We call it the beanie cap. It vents liquid or gaseous hydrogen and oxygen that's coming off the tank. And they couldn't. And obviously, you don't want to launch when it's like that. Obviously, it has to rotate back out of the way. And they couldn't verify with their data that it rotated out of the way. And so they said, well, we can look with the camera, and I'll show you a video later. We'll look with the camera and verify it's out of the way, and we can pick up the count. And sure enough, they looked at the camera, they moved it out of the way, and all of a sudden things started going really fast again, because from picking up the count from 31 seconds, it's not a lot of time before T-minus 6, and this happens. At T-minus 6, your main engines come up. You don't take off yet, but again, your main engines come up to full throttle, and then if they're all operating properly, at T-minus 0, it'll send the signal to the solid rocket boosters on the sides, and those will launch, and then once they light, you're going flying whether you're ready or not. Now, the funny thing is, when you start from 31 seconds, you know, like I said, we usually practice for T-minus 9 minutes, and you do everything methodically, and then off you go. When you pick up the count from 31 seconds, it doesn't give you a lot of time to gather your thoughts. So it's almost like 3, 2, 1, here we go, you know. And so it was a very big roller coaster that day. But once you feel the initial acceleration, you realize, okay, this is it. We're gonna go do it this day. And as you get a little bit higher, you clear the launch pad, and it's an amazing feeling. Those white rockets, they burn for 2 minutes, then they come off, and then the main engines burn for 6.5 more minutes. So you go from 0 to 17,000 miles an hour in 8.5 minutes. That's all it takes. Now, it's a great ride, and it is hard to do the job, and there's some people that have a harder job on launch day as far as I'm concerned. And that's these. That's my wife, Margie, and my sons, Alex and Jeffrey, and that's me watching me riding that controlled explosion in the background there. And that's hard the same way for my brother, Kurt, and Karen, and Mark, when they have to, you know, it's neat to watch a shuttle launch, but when you know somebody who's riding on top of that, it takes a little more different significance. So it's tough for the families to watch. And then you can see the weather that day. There still was a little bit high clouds, but it was good enough for us to get off. Once you get up, you can take your orange suit off, your launch and entry suit off, and go to work up there. Our job was to go to the International Space Station, and we were going to resupply it. So you see in our trunk here is a logistics module. It's full of about 5,000 pounds or more of supplies, food, water, experiments, all that kind of thing. And so this is a picture of us taken from the space station, looking back at us as we're getting ready to dock. And that's where we're going, the International Space Station. It's a beautiful facility. It's about the size of a 5-bedroom house, state-of-the-art research facility. And now that we've finished completely building it, we're really using it for some great research on the human body, on basic science, and systems that can last a long time in space. So once we get on board, we got to get to work. And so this is our logistics module inside. And that's Sandy, and she's this right when we got there, so we haven't unpacked anything. So we take everything that we've got in the space shuttle and move it over to the space station. And then we take a bunch of supplies that they want to bring back, and we put them back and pack them away. Now, have you ever been on a long trip when you come home from a long trip and you take all your suitcases out of the car, out of the station? You know, remember what your house looks like? Probably looks like the space station after we got there. This is Doug, and he's trying to put some of the supplies away from the space station. And it really was. We only had a week dock to the space station. They give us a lot of time to really work at stuff there. But the guys were happy to have all this equipment, and they were grateful to put it away. Now, while we were there, we had one spacewalk that the space station crew members did. So that's Mike Fossum on the end of the robotic arm. Now you see the tail of the shuttle, and that's a robotic arm. And this is Mike right here. And this turned out to be one of the best pictures of the flight, I thought, for the spacewalk. And then I looked underneath him. I go, man, that looks familiar. Does anybody know where that is? Well, look at this. Look, if you start looking at it again, this looks like the Central Valley of California. That's what's Lake Tahoe is right there, Lake Tahoe. And there's Edwards Air Force Base. And you are here under the fog right there. So this is a cool picture because it just, of all the places in the world when this picture was taken, it just happened to be over California. So it's really neat. So I really enjoy that one. Now, so how we do the spacewalks, I want to talk about that for a minute. So I can show some pictures from my second flight, and that's me on the end of the Columbus module, the European Columbus module. Now, when we're going around the Earth at 17,000 miles an hour, that means we go all the way around the Earth in 90 minutes. So what that means is the first 45, it looks real pretty, like all these pictures we take when you're in front of the Earth and the sun is shining on you. So what happens 45 minutes later? It gets dark. And so we have on our helmets, you can see this is my helmet lights here. So we have lights we put on, and you can see it's starting to get dark here. And I'm going to show you the same position here. So this is daylight here. Let me show you the same, I'm going to be working right here in this next picture. You'll see the grapple fixture there. And that's what it looks like at night. There's the grapple fixture right there. So you can see it's much more challenging to work at night in space. But it lights up an area all around you, so it works out that you can see the area that you need to see. It's just a little bit harder. You don't have the wide view. We had a crew of 10 of us all aboard. You know, there were 6 on the space station and 4 of us on the space shuttle. And one thing you'll notice there is it's a very international crew. We have a Japanese astronaut, we have Russian astronauts, and U.S. astronauts. And it's really one of the best areas I've seen of international cooperation in my lifetime. Because we all work together as one team, we work together, we solve problems together, and we're doing these magnificent things in space all together as one team. And it's kind of funny to see how times have changed. Because my father was a B-17 pilot back in the World War II era. Now could you imagine somebody tapped him on the shoulder back in the World War II era and said, someday you're going to have a son who's going to fly in space, which nobody had done, and he's going to fly with crew members. He's going to fly with a German astronaut on his second flight and a Japanese astronaut on his third flight. And could you imagine that? If somebody told him that, he would have had a real hard time believing that. But it just shows you how things change. And it really is amazing how we can cooperate in space. Then we have the cupola module. It's a module that's just full of windows. And it's really neat. It's almost like doing a spacewalk up there. And you can see me, you can see the island below me. And it's just a great place to look at the Earth. So let's try to look at some of the things you can see. Where's that? That's Italy. You know, Italy really does look like a boot, by the way. So I can show you that. There's Sicily there. Sometimes you can see Mount Etna. A little bit of smoke coming out of that. Where's this? Oh, it's kind of a little dark. Sorry, you probably can't see it quite. That's San Francisco right there. That's the Golden Gate Bridge, Golden Gate Park, and then you're clear up here. So again, sorry it's a little bit dark, can't quite see that so well. And then this is one of the best places to look at from space, and this is the Holy Land. So Israel right in front of you here. That's Israel and Egypt, and this is the Sea of Galilee, and there's the Dead Sea right there, and Haifa. And then you can see, one thing I like about this picture is like I say, you can see a lot, but then you look down and you get a real different perspective from space. It looks very peaceful, but you're looking at Israel, Syria, Iraq, and Turkey, a lot of very violent and war-torn places. And it's really amazing when you look down there, it looks very, very peaceful. But the other thing you notice is you see this little line right here? That line is our atmosphere. That is how big our atmosphere is. And when you think it, it's just absolutely amazing. That's all that keeps us alive. When you look at a picture like this, you think, boy, if the people that are all living around here could see what they have in common, and what is very, very, very important to all of them, maybe they would cooperate a little bit more instead of fighting about stuff, because it really is amazing. You really get a perspective that you're all riding on the same spaceship, which is our planet, and it really is. Now, if you, another great place to look at is right a little bit farther to the west there is Cairo, Egypt. And a lot of people probably have heard that you can see the Great Wall of China from space. You guys heard that before? Yeah, pretty much everybody's heard that, right? And I still haven't found an astronaut yet who's seen the Great Wall of China from space. I think you can, and there are some if you take a picture in the right area, but the problem is it's kind of the size of the sidewalk on the top of it, obviously. And then it's the weather conditions over China, it's very hard to get good weather conditions there with the pollution and clouds and stuff. However, you can see the pyramids from space really well. And so the way you do is first you look for the Nile River here. You see the Nile River? So from 1,000 miles away you can see the Nile River. It's really easy. And then once you see the Nile River, you look for Cairo. Now cities from space are all gray like this, right? So you look for Cairo, where Cairo crosses the Nile, go all the way up to where it meets the desert. And if you see right up here, we'll zoom in on that a little bit. See, there's the pyramids right there. So they're really easy to find. You can see there's a little bit of magnification, but not too much. Another thing you got to see from space is the northern lights and the southern lights. So this is the southern lights, and I'll show a little time lapse of it. Maybe a little bit dark here, but it's really spectacular. So here's flying over the northern lights, and you can see they shimmer. So this is sped up time lapse photography. Whoa. But it really is amazing to see. And then it's time to come home. So what we do is we undock from the space station. We turn around backwards, and we fire our engines to slow us down a little bit. All we do is slow down a little bit. That drops us into the atmosphere. And then the atmosphere, as we start hitting the air, it slows us down. Just like when you have your hand out in the car window, the air pushes against your hand, it pushes against the shuttle, heats it up really high, though, because you're going so fast. So this is a unique picture that was taken of us when we came home. This is from the space station. And this streak there is us in the space shuttle re-entering the Earth's atmosphere. And we are right there. Wow. And so when I showed this to my son Jeffrey the first time, he goes, wow, that looks like a meteor. I told Jeffrey, I'm inside that. And let me tell you, when you enter, especially at night like this is, there's no question in your mind that you're someplace you're not supposed to be for long, because it is absolutely covered with orange flames. There's flames dancing on the windows. There's plasma pulsating off the tail. It's just an extremely alien environment. And it's very comforting to finally get under the atmosphere and then start flying like a plane again. And then we land like a conventional airplane. Now with that, I'm going to go ahead and show a little video, and since the sound's not working, we'll go ahead and narrate a bit here. So this is our mission patch. Each crew gets to design their own patch, and so we designed this one. My wife actually designed it. The omega symbolizes the last letter of the Greek alphabet for the final flight of the space shuttle. And then we have the kind of NASA meatball emblem in the middle, which signifies how the space shuttle was at the core of NASA, at the heart of NASA for 30 years. That's Doug in the pilot seat, and Sandy coming to get in. And then I was the last person to get in. And so there's T-9 hold I was talking about. They check all the systems and all the weather, and everything, like I said, looked pretty good. And then they do a gimbal check of the engines. They make sure they can operate properly. And then at 31 seconds, you stop. The clock stops there. And so they start getting ready to figure out how they're going to fix this problem. And they take a look at a camera. and they swing a camera over. And see here they're swinging the camera over. You can see the hood is out of the way, so hey, it looks good. Let's go ahead and launch. And so they pick up the count. And at T-minus 6 seconds, we start our main engines. And the vehicle feels like it's going to come apart. And you're still bolting the pad. And it looks real steady there, but it's shaking like you wouldn't believe. And then a big jolt at T-minus 0. And off you go. And this next picture is us in the cockpit. And you can see what the ride is like from the inside. And that's me in the center there. So that's me right there. I'm smiling, so you can see I enjoy that stuff. My wife doesn't always like that. She says, "Well, can't you show a little bit of concern or something?" Sorry, it's too much fun. If you like roller coasters, man, there's nothing like it. And so we get up and we take the robot arm out. So this is Doug Hurley, our pilot, and he's flying the robot arm there. And what we do is we have to inspect the space shuttle and make sure there's no damage to the outside of the space shuttle. And there's Ronnie Guerin from the space station, so that's where we're going, that's where we're docking. And he's shooting pictures of us, and we're shooting pictures of them to document how the space station looks. And then when we get about 600 feet or so from the space station, we do a backflip. And the reason we do that is so we can show the backside of our space shuttle to the space station. And right when we get about here, they start taking a bunch of pictures and they carpet map the bottom of the space shuttle to make sure that there's no damage from launch. And once they do that, we can scoot up to the docking compartment, the docking right there, and get inside the space station. And it's really nice to get to the space station. It's a lot more roomy than the shuttle, so you got a lot more room moving around. That's Andre, the space station commander. And this is on board the shuttle. We had the Russians over for dinner. And so they had us over there. It sounds funny, but we're all one big crew. But we ate a lot of their food one night, and they came over and had a bunch of our food. So it worked out really well. And so now they're using the space station's robotic arm to grab this logistics module. It's got all our supplies in there, and they're going to attach it to the space station. And then this is that spacewalk I showed you a picture of that Mike Fossen was doing. So they get our suits on in this we call it an airlock. And they get all the air out just out of that area, and then they can open the hatch and go outside without depressurizing the whole space station. And you see we have helmet cameras, so this is Mike or Ronnie's hands we're looking at as they're doing the spacewalk. And then they put some solar blankets around some various equipment we wanted to keep warm, and then it was pretty much time to head back inside. And that was the final spacewalk of the space shuttle program. So they bring them back in here. They've been out for about 6-7 hours. What goes of going to space? You can't have a little fun now and then, So that little Superman cross took about 4 takes or more. We kept running into each other, so it wasn't quite as easy as it looked there. And Sandy had her special socks from when she was on the station. And here they're telling Mike that he has a future in closet organization here. So we get all the stuff out of the logistics module, and then we can start bringing all the stuff back in and getting it all packed up for coming home. And it was quite an effort. The Russians helped. Everybody helped. It was kind of all hands on deck to get everything done. And that's where it looks like everything was chock full in the space station. And that flag there was special because we put it right on the hatch there and as we were leaving. And that flag flew on STS-1, the first space shuttle mission. And President Obama asked us to put it up there and that we were going to leave it up on the space station until another U.S. vehicle launched from the United States goes up to the space station. They can take it off and bring it home. And so it's an incentive for the companies that are trying to build new vehicles to go up to the space station and have success. And so hopefully it won't be too long before somebody grabs that flag, brings it home, and then we're going to send it on the first mission past low Earth orbit out to the moon or to an asteroid. At the end of the mission, we launched a small satellite, and this is pictures from the satellite. And then it was time to come home, so we put our launch and entry suits on, in case we have any kind of pressure problems. You can see the plasma pulsating over my head there. And then there's the trail we leave as we come home. Like I say, it flies like a normal airplane. And it's a pretty smooth landing considering the other ways we've come home from space before. And with that, as exciting as a mission is, one of the best parts is when you come home and you get to see your family and stuff. So with that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about, now that the shuttle has been retired, what are we doing next? How are we going to get to space? Well, the first thing we're doing right now is we're still going to the space station because we still have American astronauts in space for 6 months at a time. But the way they get there is they ride with the Russians on the Russian Soyuz spacecraft. And the Russian spacecraft has been working well quite a while, but we end up paying about $70 million a seat for that. Now, surely in our country we can build spaceships ourselves that can go to and from the space station. So the commercial crew program is a way to have these commercial companies compete against each other to try to build the next replacement for the space shuttle that will go to the space station to and from. So there's 3 competitors that are working on possible vehicles that can go to and from the space station. 3 companies, right, you see here are Boeing, Sierra Nevada, and SpaceX. And you'll see that 2 of them, SpaceX and Boeing, are capsules. They're kind of like the Apollo capsules or the Soyuz capsules. And then one Sierra Nevada is kind of like a mini space plane, a very small version of the space shuttle. So let's take a look at all 3 of these and see what they're like. The first is Boeing, and they have a vehicle that can hold up to 7 people, probably hold more, maybe less, but it depends on what the mission needs are. And the Boeing vehicle is launched on a Atlas V. Here's a video, conception of what it'd be like. And the Atlas V is used to launch satellites right now, so it's been used quite a bit, and it's a fairly reliable vehicle. And then it comes down via parachute, and it lands on the land. So it's a pretty conventional type of method. And then let's look at Sierra Nevada. So Sierra Nevada is like a mini space shuttle, we said. And you can see here's how small it is in comparison to a space shuttle. Now the thing to remember though is the space shuttle is huge, mainly because it has a big cargo bay. This is a cargo bay for the shuttle, so most of the pressurized volume is only this big in the space shuttle anyways. So if you're not going to bring cargo, this is a people-only vehicle, you really don't need quite as much space as the shuttle had. So this is their version of how they would work on this. And so they would also launch on an Atlas V. So you can see the Dream Chasers spacecraft on top of the Atlas V. And then once it gets up, it's called the Centaur upper stage. So it undocks from the launch vehicle, and then it can separate and go up to the space station. And so it can dock with the space station. It basically turns around and docks with the space station. So you can kind of see how that one works. Let's see what's on here. And then finally, SpaceX. Now, SpaceX has a capsule design. You probably know SpaceX, though, because Sierra Nevada and Boeing haven't built any vehicles they've used yet. But SpaceX has got what they have a cargo vehicle. And that's a picture of it right here. The SpaceX cargo vehicle has already made flights to the space station, and they're going to modify that so it can hold crew members. And so they're one of the, like I say, one of the 3 companies. Let's see if we can get some of the videos from those guys. So it said, like, about a year and a half ago, SpaceX was the first company to send a spacecraft to the space station. So that's their Dragon capsule. So their version of the new vehicle will be called the Dragon Rider, which will be a man-person version of the Dragon spacecraft. And so they have their own launch system. They don't launch on the Atlas V, they launch on what's called the Falcon 9. And the Falcon 9 is a powerful rocket they've already launched for their unmanned version. And so they're going to modify it for handling people. As I say, they were designed from the ground up to be able to do that. Now, one of the things you want to do to reduce costs is if you can make things reusable, like the shuttle had some reusable parts. And Elon Musk, the head of SpaceX, what he wants to do is he wants to be able to make the first stage of that rocket reusable. Now, how would you do that? Because mostly rockets like that, they end up in the water and they're done. So he wants to make it so that you can take it off vertically, and then the first stage flies itself back to the launch pad and lands again. And it's a pretty amazing idea, but it is possible, potentially. But it takes a lot of, it's going to take a lot of hard work to make it actually be successful, because a lot of people think it can't be done, because you need to save, instead of using all your propellant going uphill, you have to save some to stop the spacecraft when it comes down. SpaceX also comes back as like a capsule and lands on the land. It has a heat shield similar to Apollo's, also to the Boeing vehicle, and then it also lands on land. So both Boeing and Sierra, all three of the companies land on land. So let me show you a test of the SpaceX rocket to show you how they would do the reusability. So this is a rocket, this is recently, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and it's a SpaceX rocket. And you watch, it mimics the first stage of the SpaceX vehicle. And he's going to take off there and do a course correction to go away from the launch pad. And then he wants to demonstrate that you can land these things vertically like this to reuse them again. So he gets up to, this test went to about, I think, 200 or 300 feet. And then when he reaches the peak, he's going to come back and let's see if they can land it back on that same pad where he took off at. And so he has to correct here. It looks like he's turned over, but he's flying back toward the launch pad. Something you don't see. It looks very odd, doesn't it? And then, sure enough, they did it and shut it off. So now this is called the Grasshopper. It's a test vehicle. So if they can get that onto a real rocket, onto a real Falcon 9, it'll really change the game for how much it costs to launch things into space. So that's what those guys are doing. Now, those are all commercial companies, and they're concentrating on how we get to and from the space station. Now that frees NASA up to do the things that NASA does best, which is true exploration, to go farther. Not just the space station, go all the way to the moon, or to an asteroid, or to Mars. And so the way we're going to do that is via the Orion spacecraft. So it's a lot more complex problem than going to and from the space station. But we take Orion, and we put it on top of this rocket that we're building called the Space Launch System. This is the biggest rocket ever built. And so we're trying to build this in the next 5 years, and it'll be even taller and more powerful in the final version than the Saturn V is. And so the Orion capsule goes on the top of this rocket. And the schedule we have is, you'll see here about 1 year from now, September of 2014, we're trying to launch the first test version of Orion. And as you notice, it's not on one of those big space launch rockets. It's on a Delta IV Heavy. This will be a test mission, no crew on it, and it'll allow us to test the heat shield and various systems of the Orion. And then in 2017, we want to send an Orion unmanned to the moon. And then in 2021, we want to put a crew on and send the Orion to lunar orbit. This just shows the first test mission, again, about a year from now, where it's going to do a couple laps, get farther away from Earth. The farther you get away from Earth, the faster you come back. And so you get really high, and that gravity pulls you down. It pulls you down very fast. So you launch from the Kennedy Space Center, go way out to about 15 times farther than the space station, and then come blazing back and really test its heat shield. And then you may have heard a little bit about an asteroid retrieval mission. So this is a video concept of how we might do an asteroid retrieval mission. It's a very advanced mission. What we would do is we actually grab an asteroid, an unmanned vehicle. It comes around the asteroid and sucks it up into this, basically a bag. And then an Orion vehicle goes up to the unmanned vehicle and docks to it. And then 2 astronauts can get out and do some science on the asteroid, bring back samples and things like that. So that's what we're currently looking forward to, but the first missions for the Orion spacecraft may change a little bit. But the big goal is to go to Mars. And so this is what we want to do eventually, and this is an Orion capsule right here. But to go to Mars, you can't just take Orion. You've got to take a deep space habitat, some kind of habitat to live in on the way there, and then a lander also to land on the moon, land on Mars if you want to land there. So it's a long process. It takes some time, but that's the overall goal that we're trying to get to. So with that, that's the slides I have. I wanted to have a chance for questions. If anybody has any questions, we can talk about any of them you might ask for. Yes.
What kind of pulse rate do you have on liftoff?
What kind of pulse rate do you have on liftoff? I don't know. It probably speeds up quite a bit, I would imagine. And the people ask me, well, when do you get the most nervous? And there's a couple of times on my second mission when I was gonna get ready to do a spacewalk, and so I was in the airlock, and everything felt like I was in the training facility, and so everything was just fine. And then I opened the hatch, and once I opened the hatch, I see, Switzerland down there, 250 miles down below me, and I can see some ice coming off my from my cooling unit. As I unhooked it, it was like, holy cow! I can hear my heart going like that. But so the first couple minutes of the spacewalk will get your heart going a little bit. And then the other time is, one time I was on the back side of the space station doing a spacewalk, and whenever we get somewhere we want to do work, we hook what's called a local tether, so maybe a 2-foot-long tether. We hook it on somewhere, and then we can let go, because we're not going to go anywhere. And so it was toward the end of the spacewalk, and I was fiddling with something, and I thought I had put a local tether on there, and it was nighttime, of course, and all these things happen at nighttime. And so as I'm working with some stuff, I start floating away from the space station, and I realize I'm farther than an arm's length reach. And for a second there I said, did I put a local tether on there? And so from the second I said, did I, until I finally swooped down and tried to grab one, my heartbeat started going boom, 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 and then I saw, yes, I did grab it. So I grabbed the tether and pulled myself back. So there's times like that can get your heart racing pretty good. Other questions? Yes?
What's the future of the International Space Station? How long will it last?
You bet. The International Space Station is currently funded till about 2020. But we want to extend it out to about 2028 because it's given a lot of great science. Because if we really want to go to Mars, if that's really what we want to do, we need to learn to live in space for a long time. And so to go to Mars will take about 3 years most likely. 9 months to get there, maybe a year there, and then maybe a year back. So 2 to 3 years it could take. Now we do that on the space station. It's been flying continuously for over 10 years. But the neat thing is we can always go bring spare parts up to the space station if we need to. So the problem, if you go on the way to Mars and your life support systems fail, you can't have a resupply. They have to fix it or they're not going to make it. And so the space station is an excellent test bed for how do we make life support systems last that long where they don't need repairs. And how do we recycle everything, our food, our water, everything. And so those are some of the things we're really learning there. But we're also doing basic science, how things behave in zero gravity. We're finding that certain basic science is different in zero gravity. When you're in science class, what do they tell you? They always tell you to control your variables. You heard that before? Control all the variables of your experiments, right? But one of the variables you can't control is gravity. But in space, you can. In the absence of gravity, you can look at basic processes and see how they work differently. And one thing we found, for instance, is that the salmonella virus, which is a very dangerous virus here on Earth, in space, without zero gravity, it actually gets much worse and much more virulent. And so it can actually attack things worse. So there's something about gravity that affects how tough this virus is. And so you find stuff like that, and you can find, okay, what can we use for countermeasures in that case? So the basic science is really good. So we want to extend the space station maybe to 2028 if we can to really continue the science that we're doing there.
I don't like
Yes, sir.
it.
Actually, I have two questions. One has to do with skeletal unloading osteoporosis.
Yep.
Density.
Yes.
The other question is related to mariners on certain ceremonies when they cross the equator. Is there something similar when we pass the carbon line?
Okay, let's do the osteoporosis question first. And yes, without the presence of gravity, people's bones tend to lose density and mass. And so it's very similar to what we see in aging people where they can start getting osteoporosis and stuff. And so it's a really good analogy to try to study that. And we were doing that. And actually on my last mission, we were doing some experiments with mice. Some of them had the osteoporosis drug and some of them didn't. And so they're finding ways to combat osteoporosis from that. So one of the main things we do is exercise. And when you're on the space station for 6 months, they have to give about a 2-hour exercise session for each astronaut every day, because if you don't exercise, your muscles will decay and your bone mass will reduce. And so we have resistive exercise. We also have treadmills where you use bungees to hold you down on the treadmill and things like that. And then resistive weightlifting stuff. So now posing. So the question about crossing the equator, we don't do ceremonies when we cross the equator because we cross every 45 minutes. However, but the current line for the division between Earth and space, when you basically earned your astronaut wings, I remember that on my first flight. Sometimes we say something you don't, but if you have rookies on board, I remember my first flight. It's about 265,000 feet. And so I remember watching, and usually in a simulation, you watch all the gauges, everything's breaking, you're fixing things, you have no time to kind of just look around. But on the real flight, usually nothing breaks, and so you have time to kind of look around and see the gauges and stuff. And I remember we were watching the altimeter go past 265,000 feet, and we're kind of going, yeah, this one counts. They can bring us home, but we get to count Ben here. And then sometimes the commander say we have 3 new astronauts on board or something like that. To kind of commemorate the fact that you got the first-time flyers and have gone into space for the first time. Other questions? Yes? How did I become an astronaut? I went to school at University of California here at Berkeley, and I got an engineering degree, and I went into the Air Force. And so I originally wanted to be a pilot, but when I got to pilot training, they said I had a heart murmur, and so they wouldn't let me fly. And it was interesting because I'd taken all the physicals and stuff before, and so I thought, well, I'll never become an astronaut now because I was going to become an astronaut, a pilot, then a test pilot. I'm sorry, a pilot, a test pilot, then I become an astronaut. Well, if I couldn't become a pilot, how did I ever become an astronaut? Well, it turns out they said I could be an engineer with this medical problem, and I could be flying the backseat of airplanes. And so I looked at doing that, and after about 7 years, I got accepted as a flight test engineer. So I wasn't a pilot, but I got to fly with them. And so when I got accepted to be a flight test engineer, they did the heart test again and said, well, you don't have a heart murmur, so you don't have to worry about it anymore. So it turns out I never had one anyways. But the point of the story is that what's more important than the path you take, because I thought the only path I could take was a pilot, a test pilot, and an astronaut. It's more important to have persistence. So that didn't work out for me. And I took another path, and then all of a sudden the doors opened up again, and I ended up getting where I wanted to go. It just was nowhere near the path that I expected to take. So I went through the military, but other people go become doctors, and they go through the medical field and become astronauts. Some go through straight to the science and become a geologist or a physicist or something like that. So there's a lot of different methods. Yes?
Do you think you'll go back up?
I think I'll go back up. It's possible. I'm an active astronaut though, but I think my brothers and my sister are sick of going down the Kennedy Space Station and watching me launch, and I don't think my wife would be too happy about that, but it is a possibility though. So, on another note too, being Rex Walheim Day, it's also my wife's birthday. So she was very nice to let me come out here, but so now next year when it's her birthday, she can say it's also the first anniversary. So I get some mileage out of that, but she was very good about letting me come. But going into space is a different story. It's okay to come to Petaluma, go over to Kazakhstan to launch a Russian rocket might be a different story though. Yes, in the back?
Did you ever have a sensation of being detached from the Earth in its orbit?
Did you ever have a sensation of becoming detached from the Earth? Not so much. There are sometimes you get some weird sensations of usually, since we're 200 miles above the Earth, you can look down and the Earth covers your field of view for the most part. But there's times when you're in an attitude where you can really see the limb of the Earth really, really well, and you get the sense that the Earth is floating there in this void. And it is a sensation there that, wow, the Earth, it's an interesting sensation that the Earth really is just hanging there in the middle of nothing. But I didn't really sense that I was detached too far from the Earth, though. Anybody else? A few more questions? Yes?
Have there been any cancer research done in space, and have we learned anything that might change the game and how we fight it?
Yeah, cancer research in space. Yeah, I think there has been studies done there, and ways about, and I think one of the ways is how they can have drugs target cancer cells better. And so I don't know the final verdict of what's coming, because usually we do basic research and then go to trials and things like that. But yeah, there's research like that goes on the space station too. Anybody? Yes?
Are you retired, or what are you doing to help?
Okay, I'm still active with NASA, so I retired from the Air Force but stayed with NASA. And my job is I'm the branch chief for the astronaut office that works on this Orion vehicle and also works on the commercial crew vehicle. So I go to SpaceX and Boeing and Sierra Nevada and work with Lockheed Martin on the new vehicle. So we have a bunch of astronauts who help with each one of those programs. So it's a lot of fun. So I get to help develop the new rockets. So being part of the space program is really fun when you're flying around. So I really enjoy it. How about one or two more? Anybody else? All right, good. Oh, one more, sir. Yes.
How many water tanks did your shuttle have?
How many water tanks did our shuttle have? That's a good question. I think we had about somewhere between. We actually had about 3 or 4, I think, and we had the capability of dumping water in the space shuttle because sometimes we get too much water. Because the way we use with electricity, you see these right here on this. Those are called solar panels, right? So that's how they generate electricity. Use solar power. On the space shuttle, we use fuel cells. So we combine hydrogen and oxygen and makes electricity. But it also produces water. And so we get a lot of water on the space shuttle. And so we would bag it up and bring it to the space station because they had solar power, so they needed a bunch of water. So we would give them our water. So we have tanks on the space shuttle, and then if it gets too full, we would dump them out. Okay, well, I appreciate you all coming out here. It's been a great time to come visit with you. And if you have any more questions, feel free to come up afterwards. It's a pleasure meeting you. Thanks.